This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show. This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show.
YouTube, what is up? I'm your homeboy Josh, back at you, and today we're taking a look at two devices. The same device. Two of the same devices. Practically the same. We're taking a look at the Kylin from VandyVape, and we're taking a look at the Ammit dual coil version from GeekVape. Now, as you may or may not know, one of the lead designers over at GeekVape went off and started his own company called VandyVape. And my guess is that somewhere along the line of creating the Ammit dual coil, the guy that headed up VandyVape, that's around the time he decided to leave, because this is one of the second or third devices that VandyVape has come out with, and it's one of the latest from GeekVape as well. So those timelines just kind of sort of sync up a little bit, if you ask me. It's interesting because they're so similar. Like, they're almost indistinguishable from each other. Almost. The top caps. The GeekVape device, you get an Ultim top cap, and the tank itself is a bit more ornate than with the Kylin, I find. It's got this sort of geometric sort of cutaways to the top of the Ammit that actually make it look a bit more aesthetically pleasing in my eyes than the Kylin, which has just more of a grippiness to it. Now, one thing I have noticed about the grippiness of the Kylin is that at times it is incredibly difficult to open. And the knurling on it is made in such a way that it can actually be rather painful to kind of grip down on it and turn and open. I'm not the biggest fan of the knurling on the Kylin. One nice thing about the Kylin though is that it comes with 2 additional drip tips. Same thing as all the VandyVape devices come with. They all come with 3 different drip tips that you can use, so you can customize that mouthfeel at the very least with the drip tips. And of course it also comes with a drip tip adapter, so you can use your own, which is nice too. The Ammit, on the other hand, all you get is the drip tip adapter and the Ultim drip tip, which, I mean, I gotta give it to the Ammit, honestly. The Ammit's top cap, the tank itself, it's nicer looking than the VandyVape version, the Kylin. I actually really like the Ultim drip tip. I actually really like the way that the knurling is cut on the Ammit. Now, that being said, the Ammit is just as difficult to open as the Kylin. They're very difficult to open, if you ask me. Something needs to be done about the threading up top so it doesn't close down so tight. Something needs to be done about the knurling on the Kylin so that it's not quite so painful to open. And the Ammit needs to be more grippy. But I like the looks of the Ammit up top better than I do the Kylin, for whatever that's worth. And these guys are so similar, they even both have juice flow control. Where it really counts is the deck. The deck is where they're even more similar. The deck, they have side airflow and bottom airflow. Bottom airflow that shoots up at the coil from underneath, and the side chamber that sort of hits it offset from the side like that. And I built both of these with dual fuse Clapton coils. I like to position my coils here so that the airflow from the bottom airflow and the airflow from the side airflow are both directed right at the coil, is how I like to do it. So that it's kind of offset on the bottom airflow and sort of coming in right underneath the side airflow. So it's hitting the coil from 2 sides like that. I really like positioning it that way in both of these devices. It works very well. The way that you tighten down your leads on both of these is also very similar. You actually go through the wicking ports. The wicking cups, inside of them, that's where you find your screw heads. Now, the Ammit decided to go with flathead screws, which I kind of like a little bit better, and the Kylin came with an Allen key, which works just as well. It's just personal preference. I prefer a flathead over an Allen key, just me. But either way, works just the same. One thing that the Kylin did a little bit differently is they added a bit of gold plate to everything. Well, gold plate to the section that houses the airflow and the wicking. The base is still stainless, and the Ammit went all stainless. The most important way that these things are most similar is that both of them look like cats. I shit you not, from the side, they look like robotic felines, which is fucking awesome, because I love cats. Anything with a cat on it, I'm all about it. But I just think it's hysterical that looking at them in profile, they look like cats. One with like a gold crown, one with like a silver mane. They just look really, really cool. The decks look really cool before you actually put any coils in them. Just an observation, really. What's most significant though, the one difference that, well, you may have noticed that I haven't been vaping on them and they're not fully put together, which is sort of an odd place to start a review. It's, you know, I've got a tank over here, a tank over here. I've got, they're all wicked up, they're ready to go, they're built. But I want to show you guys something. I want to show you something that struck me, and it's an important difference between the two of these. Up till now, you might be thinking, okay, I've given 2 points to the Ammit, and the Ammit is going to be the big winner. Well, I like the Ammit. I like the Ammit a lot. It's got this really cool logo on the side of it. It's got a nice logo on the front of it too, where it says Ammit. I like the Ultim drip tip. I like the screws on the deck a little bit better. I mean, so far, the Ammit, I mean, I thought I was gonna like the Ammit best too, is the thing. The Kylin just has the Kylin and the VandyVape logo up there. It's got less aesthetically pleasing knurling up top, a more generic style of drip tip. But, you know, the deck has that gold plate on it. I gotta give it to the Kylin for the gold plate, of course. But then again, I like the screws better on the Ammit because they're flatheads versus the Allen key connection on the Kylin. So, I mean, the thing is that they're so similar until we look at one more thing. So come on in here, let me show you something again. And this might be the most important difference between them. It's what's going on inside the airflow chamber. This is the Ammit. Adjustable airflow has 4 options that provide airflow. The inside, there's nothing there. You can even see the connection for the positive post down in the airflow hole. That's all you can really see in there. Everything else is just wide open. This is the Kylin. It's got 1, 2, 3 stops for airflow control that provide airflow. And with that, you might think it's still the Ammit because it has more options. But look inside. Inside the Kylin, there's something going on there. There's a piece of PEEK. And I'm not sure what it's doing. If it's just insulating, which I don't think so, or else it would be way smaller, and what would insulation have to do in there anyway? I think it's doing something with redirecting the airflow. Now, I'm not going to break it apart so I can see more of what's going on there, but there's something happening here with the Kylin airflow. Some piece of plastic in there is working to do something to the airflow. I'm not sure why it's so significant, but let me show you something else. These are the same coils that you saw installed into the Ammit earlier. One thing I did do, to be fair, is before I re-wicked it just now, I did cut the coils just a tiny bit shorter because I think they may have been up a little bit too high. But you can see how these coils are virtually unused because I've been having a really shit time with the Ammit. These are also the same coils that were installed into the Kylin, which I showed you earlier as well. You can see that these are well used. I've been having a lot of fun with the Kylin. That's the most significant difference between the two. Is that so far, the Kylin has been a far superior device, in my experience, than the Ammit. Indeed, the Ammit has been leaking like a sieve. Meanwhile, the Kylin has been working like a dream. I've been using the Kylin so much, I even went and installed the extension for it, which does disrupt the flavor a little bit, takes that down a notch, but I mean, it's a small chamber on the Kylin. Same small chamber on the Ammit. Kylin just, you know, I like it enough that I didn't mind it and put on the extension so I didn't have to fill it as often. Nice thing that they both come with it. We're gonna put that to the test one more time. Now that I've re-wicked them one more time, now that I've cut the coil shorter on the Ammit, and now that I've pointed out the significant difference between the two. That's the one significant difference. Moment of truth, I guess. We'll check back in with that in a few moments. Okay, so that's the thing. The thing is that the Kylin has this extra piece, this extra bit of PEEK. I don't know what it's doing. Insulation, probably not, but most likely something to do with airflow inside the chamber. Something's going on in there that the Ammit doesn't have. And that is what is setting sets the Kylin apart over the Ammit. Something extra. All right. So I've got the airflow tubes open again. Airflow holes are open all the way. The Ammit has 28 gauge fuse Claptons in there. The Kylin has 26 gauge fuse Claptons in there. Other than that, the builds are identical. I've been vaping the Kylin at about 120 watts, and when I vape on the Ammit, I vape at about 80. Flavor is awesome on both of them. Intense, delicious. It's among the best flavor I've ever had out of an RTA. Do I think either of them necessarily top the Petri RTA for flavor? I don't know, I really like the Petri. I don't know if I'm quite ready to make that comparison yet, but vape on them a little more, maybe I'll change my mind. Now, the thing about the Ammit is that in using it, it was leaking on me constantly. I re-wicked this thing so many times, and no matter what I did, it wouldn't stop leaking. Built the same way pretty much. The coils on the Ammit were maybe a little bit higher, so I lowered them down a bit to see if that makes a difference. But something going on with the Kylin that the Ammit just doesn't have. They both vape wonderfully well. They're almost indiscernible that way. Even 80 watts versus, 100, 110, 120. Indiscernible, they both vape very, very well. Flavor is excellent on both of them. I'm gonna go vape on these for a little while. I'll be back to tell you if the Kylin is still beating out the Ammit in that one factor, leakage. Well, I've had the opportunity to spend a few more hours with both devices, and I have to say, I have to correct myself. Indeed, the Ammit RTA dual coil version is not leaking. It really isn't. I think it must have been the way my coils were positioned originally. My coils that I originally had positioned in the Ammit were up maybe about a millimeter and a half, maybe 2 millimeters higher than they were in the Kylin. And when I lowered those coils down just a little bit more, took off that extra 2 millimeters or so, since then, it hasn't been leaking. So I think it comes down to the proper build in here. The coils, building them as close to that airflow as possible is the best way to go. Just close enough so that it's not going to touch the bottom, really. That's it. Right above the airflow, just like that. And that seems to work perfectly. And then just a ton of cotton. You can wick these things. I mean, you can just shove cotton in there. Tons of cotton. So to be completely honest with you, that means I still have absolutely no idea what that bit of peak is doing inside the Kylin's airflow system. I can only imagine that it's working to redirect the airflow into each separate airflow slot, rather than with the Ammit, it's one big airflow slot in the middle, and both airflow holes are feeding both air intakes. That's what I think it is. Do I notice a difference between the two? Yeah, I feel like the airflow on the Kylin is just a little bit smoother. A little bit smoother airflow. The airflow on the Ammit, there are times I do get a little bit of gurgling. There are times where maybe it's like a slight restriction to the airflow of the Kylin that actually just tweaks the vape just a little bit, gives it a little bit of turbulence in the airflow, which I like. They're almost identical in how they vape, not just in how they look. I mean, they look almost identical with just very subtle aesthetic differences between the two. Flathead screws versus hex screws. I mean, that's the extent of the differences here. And that bit of airflow diversion within the Kylin. Other than that, you can't go wrong with either one of these. I feel like the Ammit has one up on the Kylin in terms of aesthetics. I feel like the Kylin has maybe half up on the Ammit in terms of flavor and the vape experience of it. They're just neck and neck. I'd honestly recommend either one of them. Really would. Even with the top fill function being so difficult to open on both of them, that's really the main flaw that they both share, is how difficult it is to open the fill port. That drives me fucking crazy, and it can be a very easy fix. Aside from that, I'd recommend both of them. Anyway, I appreciate all the things you guys do, the likes, the comments, the shares, the subscriptions. You guys are awesome. 2 more ways that you can help support the channel. There's a Patreon link in the description, and I'm sure that by now I've added some affiliate links into the descriptions of my videos, so if you click those links, that'll help support the channel as well, and I really appreciate it. Anyway, till next time, I'm your homeboy Josh. Vape on, Vapers.